straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. The alleged Boulder store shooter ordered to be held in jail without bail, as a family of 10 victims remember their loved ones.
Oh, Ricky was living her dream.
The sister-in-law of one of the so-called Doomsday cult suspects speaking out. Why Tammy Daybell's sister says she was shocked when she learned Chad Daybell remarried to Lori Vallow just weeks after Tammy's death. We break down all the key players in the Derek Chauvin trial. Everything you need to know about the death of George Floyd. Plus, an exclusive preview of our interview with the head of the Minnesota Police and Police Officers Association, here from the organization funding Chauvin's defense.
This is such a very important case, and the world is watching.
Law and Crime Daily, covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmire along with Terri Austin. There are nearly as many lawyers as jurors in the trial of Derek Chauvin, set to start next week. Angenette Levy is here with a breakdown of who's who in the courtroom.
Brian, there are 11 lawyers on the prosecution team. The defense has one lawyer in the courtroom. And over the next month, a very long list of witnesses will testify in the trial of Derek Chauvin.
My name is Keith Ellison.
Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison was in the courtroom for much of jury selection. He's Minnesota's top cop, and before that served in Congress and the state legislature. He spent years prior to that working as a civil rights attorney.
Let's look at exactly what this is being offered to prove.
Assistant Attorney General Matthew Frank leads the trial team and heads the trial division at the AG's office. He's flanked by a rotating cast of 10 lawyers.
And that's what we're asking for at this point.
Neil Katyal has appeared via Zoom. During the Obama administration, Katyal served as an acting solicitor general. Steve Slisher is on loan from his law firm. He worked as a federal prosecutor for 13 years.
Having an expert who can explain medically what they are is helpful to the jury.
Another special prosecutor, Jerry Blackwell, is known for winning a posthumous pardon for a man wrongfully convicted of rape in connection with the Duluth lynchings of 1920.
The defense filed a single, highly unusual expert report.
Sandeep Iyer clerked for Justices Souter and Breyer at the U.S. Supreme Court and for Brett Kavanaugh when he was a federal judge. Also on the team, Lola Velasquez-Aguiu, Nathaniel Zielinski, Victoria Joseph, Harrison Kilgore, and Danielle DeSaulniers-Stempel.
He's not responsive right now, bro.
And there will be a long line of witnesses, including Donald Williams. He was there the day George Floyd died. He's expected to be a key prosecution witness. He saw part of what happened and also has a mixed martial arts background. Hennepin County Medical Examiner Andrew Baker will likely face a grilling from the defense after he was quoted by county officials as saying, absent other factors, he would have classified Floyd's death a drug overdose. And the teenage girl who filmed the bystander video of George Floyd's arrest, Darnella Frazier, will testify for the state.
You think that's okay?
An off-duty firefighter will also testify about what she saw when Floyd was in custody.
Your Honor, I think the court hits the nail kind of square on the head.
And last but not least, Eric Nelson represents Derek Chauvin. He's a managing partner in Minnesota's largest criminal defense firm. He's described by a friend as cool under pressure, prepared, and an avid baseball fan. He's represented clients in other high-profile murder cases.
And we really haven't heard from the defense team in this case. They've been very quiet. Attorney General Keith Ellison held a press conference when announcing the charges, but other than that, we haven't heard much from him either. Now, one person we are hearing from exclusively is the executive director of the Minneapolis Police and Peace Officers Association. That is an organization that has members who are 911 dispatchers, police officers, things like that, and they lobby the legislature for pro-law enforcement legislation. That organization also has a legal defense fund, and it's covering the legal fees for the 4 officers charged in this case. Brian Peters told me that he actually believes that all of the officers have a pretty good defense.
I can't say too much about specifics about the case, but you will see what training officers were given at the Minneapolis Police Department. You'll see quite a bit of evidence regarding the medical examiner's report. And, those are important aspects of the case that really haven't been discussed thoroughly. And I think the public will be able to see a lot more of those facts and make a determination on their own.
We'll have much more of that exclusive interview on the next edition of Law and Crime Daily. Brian?
Thanks, Angenette. Joining us today is civil rights attorney DeWitt Lacey and Terri Austin. DeWitt, in a trial, optics is everything. So is this the AG throwing the book at Chauvin, or is it David versus Goliath?
In some regards, I think it's a little bit of both. Now, I mean, yeah, optics are everything, and it can be perceived by the folks on the jury, and at least the viewers of the trial, that the prosecution is coming down really heavy on Mr. Chauvin. And, you know, that could make it very tough to go hard against him or, be very direct in their conviction. But, you know, we'll have to see just how the evidence shakes out.
Now, Terri, 11v1 sounds like an extreme soccer game. What are your theories on why there's so many prosecutors here to prosecute Chauvin for the murder of George Floyd?
You know, look, I know that if you have too many cooks in the kitchen, you could really spoil, the dinner, basically. But I think if you make sure that everyone has a role, it should not be a problem. And what I would do if I were the prosecution with all of these people available, have one person focus on the opening and the closing. Have someone else focus on appealable grounds, have someone who can do the motions. I mean, there are so many things that you could just sparse out here to make sure that the case is tried. And this is a high-profile case. I think that you need to make sure that everyone is on the top of their game. I'd even have someone who is focusing on the jury charges. So I think there's enough work to go around.
Exactly. Angenette, did Brian Peters say whether Chauvin's lawyer is working with the other lawyers for the 3 other officers?
Yeah, from our conversation, it sounds like they are all working together, kind of exchanging information. You have to remember that at the very beginning of this case, all 4 officers were set to be tried together. And then Chauvin's case was severed from the case involving the other 3 officers, so he was going to be tried by himself. So they are all being kind of paid by the same organization, the MPPOA, and they are exchanging information.
Yeah, it makes sense. It does take a lot more than just one defense attorney to kind of hold the weight of an entire trial with this magnitude. And be sure to tune in to the Law and Crime Network for gavel-to-gavel coverage of the Derek Chauvin murder trial and the death of George Floyd. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, the sister of Chad Daybell's ex-wife, Tammy Daybell, speaks out about Chad marrying Lori right after her sister's death. But first, the nurse sentenced to 3 years in jail after admitting to cleaning up after a murder sees her jail time cut in half. Welcome back. Legal avenues appear to hit a dead end for actor Johnny Depp for one of his cases in British court. Depp has lost his last-ditch appeal in a libel case against a UK tabloid. Depp was suing The Sun for an article calling him, quote, a wife-beater for domestic violence allegations against his ex-wife, actor Amber Heard. A 3-week trial last year ended with the judge dismissing Depp's claim, saying the headline was substantially true. Heard testified she was in fear for her life because of Depp's abuse. Depp appealed, maintaining that it was him who was the victim. The judge rejected his arguments. Lawyers for The Sun hailed the ruling as a victory for the freedom of the press and for victims of domestic violence everywhere. An Idaho woman who admitted to helping her boyfriend dispose of his fiance's body has been resentenced. Flight instructor Kelsey Barrett went missing on Thanksgiving Day in 2018. Her fiance, Patrick Frazee, was found guilty of first-degree murder based on large part of the testimony of his girlfriend, Crystal Kenney. Kenney said she got rid of Barrett's cell phone after Frazee beat her to death with a baseball bat. Kenney was sentenced to 3 years. She appealed on the grounds that her sentence was unconstitutional, saying she was not advised of her Blakely rights.
This defendant was charged with a Class 6 felony. So in Colorado, the presumptive sentence is up to 18 months. But what the judge did was the judge found aggravating circumstances and increased that sentence up to 3 years. Well, there's this Supreme Court case called Blakely. And essentially what it says is that if a defendant is going to receive a sentence that is above the presumptive range, then based on certain facts, then a jury must find those facts beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not something the judge can just, eyeball and say, oh, this case is particularly egregious.
Kenney was resentenced to 18 months in prison. The judge said in court that he believed the punishment was too short for Kenney's cold, calculated, and cruel actions. With credit for time served, Kenney will get out in 4 months. Back with us is civil rights attorney DeWitt Lacey and Terri Austin. Terri, looks like the judge was bound by law to give a max of 18 months, but what do you make of his remarks afterwards?
You know what, Brian, I totally agree with Judge Sells. I think the punishment was too short. There's no question that she was cold and calculated. She really could have, and the judge said this, she could have stopped this crime because she knew it was going to happen because her boyfriend was asking her repeatedly to help him kill, his ex-fiancée. So I definitely think that she should have gotten as much as she possibly could have, and that, what is occurring is this 18-month sentence is really going to be applied, and she's already going to have time served. She's only going to serve about 4 more months. So, I think she got off very lightly for a very serious, heinous crime.
I totally get that, DeWitt, but on the flip side, she testified helping to get a murder conviction without the promise of a deal and got the maximum penalty for the charge she was charged with. It's not like she got something lower. Could the issue probably be that she's getting out too soon?
Well, that's certainly what the court seemed to think. The court believed that she was getting off too leniently, and he wanted to make sure that the message was sent loud and clear that anybody who engages in this type of behavior, and especially Miss Kenney, was going to be subjected to some pretty, harsh punishments. But the law only allows her to get to 18 months. The court just doesn't have the right then to, as was said in the preview, to eyeball it and add on some enhancements just because he felt so passionate about it.
Yeah, oftentimes when you see things like this, like in the past, we've looked at Jennifer Dulos' case with Jennifer's Law, maybe we'll see a law coming out of this case where there'll be greater punishments for things like this, because I think we can all agree, I don't know, driving and going down to this distance and participating in the cleanup this way is definitely something that maybe should have more than 18 months in jail, but we'll keep eyes on that. Coming up on Law&Crime Daily, the accused of Boulder store shooter's first court appearance, the charges prosecutors could be adding to the case. Plus, the Doomsday couple back in the news, the family member speaking out for the first time in an interview you don't want to miss. Next. The sister-in-law of the so-called Doomsday cult suspect is speaking out. Terri Austin has been closely following the saga and explains why this new interview is so shocking.
Brian, so many people have been affected by this case, including Tammy Daybell's only sister, Samantha. Lori Vallow and her husband, Chad Daybell, are facing charges for an alleged plot to conceal and destroy evidence while Vallow's children were reported missing. Authorities discovered the bodies of JJ and Tylee Ryan buried in shallow graves on Daybell's property. Before Lori, Chad was married to Tammy Daybell for 29 years. Tammy died in October 2019. At the time, Chad said she died in her sleep, but law enforcement now say her death is suspicious and have exhumed her body for an autopsy. Tammy's sister says she was shocked when she found out Chad had married Lori just weeks after Tammy passed away. She told NBC's Dateline that Chad did appear emotional after Tammy's death.
I got a phone call from Chad telling me that she had passed away in her sleep.
How do you process something like that?
You don't. I mean, there's just so many thoughts running through your head. And a lot of it was like, no, that didn't happen.
What did Chad say happened?
That she'd been sick and had a coughing fit and passed away.
How did he sound on the phone?
He sounded upset and devastated. I mean, I was crying and he was crying, and yeah, it was a really hard moment.
Back with us is civil rights attorney DeWitt Lacey. Terri, there's so much smoke in this case. It's surprising there's not an Amazon forest-sized fire. How does this interview affect the big picture for Vallow and Daybell?
Look, I think the big picture is 6 people around Lori and Chad have died under suspicious circumstances in just 2-year period here. And, you know, we have, of course, we have JJ and Tylee. We have Charles, Lori's ex-husband. We have Tammy, Chad's previous wife. We have Alex, Lori's brother. And don't forget, we have Joseph Ryan, who was Tylee's father. So it's unclear how many of these deaths will get into the current case here. In fact, you know, it might be more prejudicial than probative, and we don't even have the murder charges yet. But I do think that these deaths are suspicious and that at some point it's going to come back to haunt Chad and Lori. And if they can tie it to this cult belief and all of these other deaths, who knows? Maybe it will get into the case.
Now, DeWitt, that's kind of my question. I know about these facts. You know about these facts. Our viewers know about these. But will these get into a potential trial for either Chad Daybell or Lori Vallow? Daybell?
I don't think so, because the trial right now is about the deaths of the children. And the death of, you know, Chad's former wife is not really going to be relevant, although it is going to be very high profile. I can't really think of a circumstance in which it would be relevant to the death of the children, Joshua and Tylee. But I would imagine the prosecution is going to do everything they can to imply something about these other deaths. And I agree, you know, from first blush, the very first time I heard about this case, none of it passed the smell test for me.
Yeah, I can't think of a way this comes in. I agree with you, but I bet you the prosecution is thinking of a way that this comes in. I will make sure to keep an eye on that case. When we come back, the first look at the Boulder store shooting suspect after the deadly rampage that left 10 people dead. When to expect more charges next. Welcome back. The accused Boulder store shooter appeared in court for the first time as prosecutors announced their plan to file more charges. Ahmad Al-Issa wheeled into a Colorado courtroom Thursday morning. The suspect going before a judge on 10 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted first-degree murder.
And any statement that you do make can and may be used against you.
Boulder police say Al-Issa went on a deadly shooting rampage inside a King Super grocery store on Monday afternoon.
Right now, you're being held without bail.
10 people were killed in the shooting, including 25-year-old Ricky Olds. Ricky's uncle describing her as the light of their family.
And Ricky was pursuing her dream of being a store manager at King Supers.
Ricky's co-worker and friend says Ricky's nickname was Wendy for her long braids.
Ricky at work, she would dance to the music. We called it her gorilla dance. She would flail her arms, anything to make you smile, to make you laugh. If you were having that bad day, Ricky was there to make it better.
Also killed was Boulder police officer and father of 7, Eric Talley. The Boulder police chief becoming emotional while talking about Talley, saying the shooting is personal.
I just had that officer's whole family in my office 2 weeks ago to give him an award.
Law enforcement honoring Talley with a police escort on Wednesday as his body was taken to a funeral home. His cruiser now a memorial outside the police station. The flowers line the fence outside the grocery store as the community awaits justice.
The people have filed a complaint and information charging 11 counts.
Al-Issa's public defender told the judge her client suffers from an unspecified mental illness and asked to postpone his next court date.
Our position is that we cannot do anything until we are able to fully assess Mr. Al-Issa's mental illness.
Al-Issa's defense said they cannot assess him until they receive discovery. Prosecutors say the investigation is still ongoing.
I will say the crime scene has not yet been completed in terms of the processing. We will be filing additional charges in the next couple weeks.
You've discussed this with your client, and he understands that he'll continue to be held without bond during that interceding 3 months or so.
Yes, Your Honor.
DeWitt, Al-Issa's defense attorney is already talking about competency, trying to get him assessed. In a case like this, should we be expecting to see a potential insanity defense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly what they're going to go for. As a matter of fact, I don't see that there's any other way that they could have some type of legitimate defense come time of trial. Insanity is what they're going to go to. It seems to be what they're already positioning for, and I think you could expect that coming.
Now, Terry, more charges to come. I would think they'd be stacking them on top of each other because there's no death penalty in Colorado. But what charges do you expect to be filed, and would or should there be plea negotiations in a case like this?
Well, I don't think there should be any plea negotiations, but I do hope they stack up the charges here. In addition to the 10 counts of murder and the 1 attempted murder count, they could charge him with resisting arrest. They could possibly charge him if it turns out there were any drugs that he had in his system. And we know that he purchased this gun. They could investigate to determine whether or not it was legally purchased. And, you know, we also know, Brian, that the FBI has him on a list because he was previously known to be linked with another individual. So there could be some charges after the fact here if we turn out that there's some information there for the FBI coming up with this additional link to this additional person.
Absolutely. And like we've said before, March 23rd of 2020, the death penalty in Colorado was abolished, making the 22nd state in the country to do so. So expect to see multiple charges, and also the word consec, as the prosecutor tries to consec those charges on top of each other. DeWitt, Terry, thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us here at Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.
Hi, I'm Dan Abrams. In the exploding legal and true crime genre, Law and Crime is the only network that has it all.
Good evening and welcome.
This is a complicated case.
Don't really jump to conclusions.
Welcome to Prime Crime Tonight. Another day of drama between both sides.
From multiple live trials daily to original and compelling programming, the Law and Crime Network is everywhere, and we invite you inside the jury box. This is Law and Crime.